Hey everybody, welcome to Brian's Vinyl Records. I'm Brian, and today I've got another artist spotlight. I'm talking about, of course, Metallica. So stick around and I'm going to show you what albums from Metallica I currently have on vinyl. All right, welcome back, everyone. So, Metallica, one of my favorite bands, and I didn't get into them really until the early 90s, and a lot of my friends were really into Metallica. And so, about that time, I started playing guitar and playing in bands and things like that, and a lot of times we would play a ton of Metallica songs. This is right after the Black Album had made it really big, so that was all over the place. So, I started getting into Metallica and really enjoying a lot of the old catalog that had come out. So when I started collecting records again, I decided that I needed to try and find as many of Metallica albums as I could on vinyl because they've always been a very big influence to me as far as guitar playing and things like that. So let's go to it. We're starting with the one that led it all off, Metallica's Kill 'Em All. Now this is a repress from Blackened Records. I know a lot of people are trying to get that Megaforce copy. I don't think I'll ever own that, and that's fine. But this is great enough for me. I think the Blackened presses have actually gotten a bad rap for I don't know what reason, because they all sound really good to me. So I don't know if they have a couple bad batches out there or what, but this sounds awesome. I love it. This is a great album. When we had the Barn Band back in the day, we used to play Seek and Destroy from this all the time, and we'd always try and play Jump in the Fire as well. Just really good. And then I like to doodle with the Four Horsemen riffs because those are always fun as well. So Metallica, Kill 'Em All, 1983. Then, of course, we get to Ride the Lightning. This is the shirt I'm wearing, so that's kind of cool. But this is a great album. This is probably actually, sadly, my least favorite of the Cliff Burton era of Metallica. And that doesn't mean it sucks. I mean, there's no bad Metallica album from the Cliff Burton era. But of the three that came out at his time, I think this is probably the weakest of them. And I know a lot of people argue that it is probably their best. But to me, I don't know. I find it okay. I think the songs like Fight Fire with Fire and Trapped Under Ice are kind of just not my thing, right? But I love For Whom the Bell Tolls. I love Ride the Lightning. I love Fade to Black. And of course, Creeping Death is amazing. So, you know, there's a little something for everything. But to me, weakest of the Cliff Burton era, still a phenomenal album, Ride the Lightning. This was, I think, 1984. Up next, the final of the Cliff Burton era and the masterpiece of the Cliff Burton era. Master of Puppets, to me, is probably the best Metallica album ever put out. Love, love, love this album. I can't tell you how many times we would listen to this front to back in the car, on drives, wherever we went. Battery, kicking things off, just a phenomenal song. You've got Welcome Home Sanitarium, which is one of my favorites. Of course, the title track, Master of Puppets, is a killer. Orion is a kick-butt instrumental piece. I mean, Disposable Heroes, Leper Messiah, The Thing That Should Not Be, just front to back, their best album, in my opinion, is right here. Master of Puppets, this is 1986. This is also the album that kind of gave them more exposure as they toured with Ozzy Osbourne on this one. So pretty good album. Another Blackened reissue. All three of these that I have so far have been the Blackened reissues. This one I'm really excited about. This is Garage Days Revisited, the 598 EP. And I picked this up in Seattle, of all places. We were walking down the streets of Seattle. I was on a business trip with a couple coworkers, and we had some time to kill, so we were walking all over the place trying to find some live music in Seattle, which we couldn't do. It was crazy. But I saw a little shop on one of the corners that said, you know, hardcore, punk, and metal vinyl. So I said, hey, let's go check this out. we went in there, and a lot of it was really obscure metal stuff that I didn't know, which, nowadays I think would be kind of cool to go back and find that place and dig through what they have. But I did find this there. It was sitting in a bin. It has a little crease up in the corner up here, but otherwise everything looked really good, and the vinyl looked great. So I said, screw it, I'm going to buy it. I think I paid like $13 or something like that for it. And I stuffed it in my suitcase on the airplane home and made it there successfully, and it sounds great. It's killer. It's an original press of the album, so I mean, how cool is that? So Garage Days revisited the 598 EP on vinyl. Pretty cool. This was Jason Newsted's intro to the band, and I believe this was 1987 that this came out. Another masterpiece right here, and Justice for All. How do you go wrong with this album? This is probably my second favorite Metallica album of all. And, I get it. People are upset because you can't hear Jason in the mix, and understandably so. When you hear him live, it's so much cooler to have the bass in there. I don't get the reasoning behind it. I think Lars is an idiot when it comes to what he did with the bass mixing on this album, and it's really stupid, and it's sad that the tapes are so damaged that they can never resolve it without having someone re-record the bass parts, which it's just a crying shame. However, this is the brand new reissue that they just put out last year of this album, and I'm telling you right now, this is the definitive version of the album. It sounds amazing. No, there's no more bass in it. You maybe a smidge more bass in it, but it doesn't really tell anything. But the guitars sound so good, and honestly, the guitars are so bass heavy in this album that you almost wouldn't hear the bass anyway, even if it was in the mix. So just a really awesome press of this album. They did a great job with this reissue, a great job with it. And like I said, probably my second favorite Metallica album of all time. In the band, we used to play Harvester of Sorrow all the time. That was one of our favorite go-to songs to jam. Of course, we'd always try to play one, but I mean, even I'm not that fast, and it's hard to do. So, but just a lot of fun with this album. Blackened, great stuff. Jason Newsted's debut with the band was the Garage Days. This was his proper debut. Sadly, nobody heard it. And this is the album that got me into Metallica, and I think probably the same for a lot of people. This is the self-titled Metallica album, best known as the Black Album. And man, I just remember we played tons of songs off this album in our little barn band. And gosh, Enter Sandman, Sad But True, Unforgiven, Through the Never. My favorite track on here, though, is Of Wolf and Man. Why? I don't know. I really can't tell you. I just really love that song and My Friend in Misery. Two really good songs. And guess what? You can hear Jason Newsted on this. The bass is there. It's there. So just a killer album, and obviously their best-selling album ever, and really got them into the mainstream. Some people say for the bad of the band. I say whatever. It got more people listening to Metallica and the old catalog as well. So a really good album anyway. Next up, Metallica Load. Now, if you know my podcast, you heard myself and my buddy Jay taking this album to task, track by track, telling you what we thought about it. I mean, it's been, 23 years or so since this was released. So we gave it another listen and kind of broke it down track by track, told you what we thought of it nowadays and what we think of the tracks and all that kind of stuff. And, there's a lot of people who hate this album. So if you do, I recommend going and listening to the podcast and listen to us kind of talk about each of the songs and what works and what doesn't with them, and maybe give it another listen to hear what it's like now. I like this album. I liked it from the beginning though. When I heard the song Until It Sleeps, the first track that they released off this, I really dug it. I think it was the wrong track to release, and we go into that on the podcast, but I still think it's a good album overall, and I kind of dig it. There's some good stuff on here. So this is 1996's Metallica Load album, which was then followed up 2 years later by Reload. I can't say much good about this one. I know there's some people who really like it, but to me this is the weaker of the two, and if I could, I would grab maybe 3-4 songs off this album, rip 3 or 4 off of that album, and put them together as one album package, and I think you would have what I would consider to be a really, really good album. Unfortunately, they recorded all these tracks and decided to put them out as 2 separate albums, which, is fine. But to me, this is the weaker of the 2 albums. Not a big fan of many of these tunes on here. They do have a couple of really good songs on here, but otherwise, it's a forgettable Metallica album. And so, Reload, this is 1998. Death Magnetic. When this came out, I was pumped. I heard it, I listened to it, I loved it. They went back to that classic heavy riffs, fast thrash metal sound with the tons of different changes and things like that. It sounded like Metallica of old. And, a lot of people do not like this album because the production on it is not great. Now, I never really noticed it, to be honest with you. I never noticed how bad the production was, how much compression was on this album or any of that stuff, because I was really into the songs. I mean, I really like the songs, All Nightmare Long, The Day That Never Comes, even Unforgiven 3 is good, The Judas Kiss. I think this is a really fantastic album, and I will tell you this, I think that it sounds pretty darn good on vinyl. So much better than it does on CD, and definitely better than it does on a stream. So if you like the songs on this album but don't like the production, I think you're good enough to give this a try and give it a listen on vinyl, because I think it sounds so much better. It's still got some problems and some issues with compression and things like that, which you won't get away from, unfortunately, unless someone goes in and remasters and remixes everything. And I don't see them doing that. But I think it sounds great on vinyl, and I really like this album. I think it's a great album. So, Death Magnetic. This was 2008, I want to say. Yep, 2008. Well, what can I say about this? This is what people really wanted when they started coming back with more music. This is Metallica's Hardwired to Self-Destruct. It's a gatefold. They released a couple different versions of this with different colored vinyl inside. This is just your standard black, which is all I really needed. I didn't really care if I had got the red one or whatever other colors they put it out on. But I got this on CD when it first came out. It was a 3-disc set. It has a lot more stuff than the vinyl here does. And I really dug it. I thought it was awesome. Heavy as heck. Fast, speed metal, another return to form from Metallica. And this is the album people turn to when they say Metallica's return to form. I think it's Death Magnetic, but this is also a good return to form. This has a lot of really long songs on it, like the old Metallica stuff did, and just a really fantastic album all around. And the vinyl is nice because it's cut down, so the CD that I got has an extra whole CD of songs added to it on the end, and this is just the proper album as it should have been in the first place. So there are, I think, 10, maybe 11 songs on here, and just all really classic Metallica sounding songs. Love it. Great album. Metallica, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. Awesome. And the last one I want to show you, yep, there's one more. This is an awesome album. This is Metallica's Helping Hands, live and acoustic at the Masonic Lodge. This is really good. This is an acoustic live album that they put out for charity, out the All Within My Hands charity that they are the people behind, and helping people get fed. It's just really cool. And this is a cool set. Now, James is a little sick on here, and you can tell that with it, but he does a phenomenal job, and the band is just awesome here. What I love about this is they do some songs that you just didn't expect to hear as an acoustic song. And what do I mean by that? Well, they have a new version of Enter Sandman on here. It doesn't sound like the Enter Sandman on the albums, and it works really well. So kind of cool. The Four Horsemen, they do a Four Horsemen song on here, different from the album obviously because it's acoustic, and they reimagine it, and it's really cool. They also do Bleeding Me on here, which I think is an absolutely phenomenal version of the song, and they do a bunch of covers on here too. They do a cover of When a Blind Man Cries by Deep Purple. They do a cover of Please Don't Judas Me by Nazareth. I think that's a really cool one. They do a cover of a song called Veteran of the Psychic Wars, and that's the Blue Oyster Cult song. And I think, and then of course Turn the Page by Bob Seger. That's a classic that they do a lot. But just an absolutely awesome album. If you can get a copy of this, I highly recommend it. It's just a fantastic album. And what's cool is it comes on this really sweet marbled blue vinyl. His sound is fantastic. Sound is awesome. So that is it. This is the last of my Metallica on vinyl. What am I missing? Oh, that's right. Wow. How could I not have Saint Anger? Well, I haven't convinced myself to buy that album yet because I absolutely detest it. It's one of their worst. To me, it's their worst album that they ever did. The production is awful on it. Lars decided to use his snare as a toilet or something because all you hear is the open hollow hits on that. It sounds awful. There's no guitar solos. And so I haven't convinced myself. I'm going to get it. I will get it because I want to have the full Metallica set. So I will get that. I just haven't convinced myself to buy it yet. I'm hoping to find it at like $12 because then I don't feel like I'm throwing my money out the door if I'm only paying something like that, which I don't think is ever going to happen. But who knows? Maybe I'll run across it as a used album that someone decided to discard and I can get it cheap that way. That's probably the only time I'm going to get it. We'll have to wait and see. I will eventually cave and get Saint Anger just so I have it. But otherwise, I've got all of their albums on vinyl. Except for like the Garage Days, Garage Inc. I still need to get that. I still need to get the S&M Metallica album as well. But I think those are the only ones that I'm missing. And to me, they're not a studio album, so they're not as crucial to get. I guess they are a studio album, but not the same sense. Not as crucial for me to get those. But I will eventually have them. So there you go. That's my Metallica collection. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of this type of video. I'm still trying to gauge if people are interested in more artist spotlights or not, so let me know. Leave a comment below. Please subscribe if you're new and you enjoyed this video. Lots of cool stuff on the channel if you want to check that out. And yeah, you can check me out on social media, Brian's Vinyl Records, pretty much everywhere. Just search for that and you'll find me. And yeah, until next time, just keep spinning, vinyl friends.